Whether you use a standard gauge, mid gauge, or bulky machine, the fringe trim is an essential technique to learn. Written instructions are available by following the link in the description below. Basic fringe trim is ideal when you want the fringe to point outward from the edge, like on the bottom of a sweater. The first sample was knit on a Brothers standard bed machine using a very lightweight boucle, about a 224 weight. As you can see, the delicate loops of the fringe trim are quite feminine and attractive. For this little girl's sweater, I used worsted weight yarn on a bulky machine. Basic fringe trim is used on the bottom edge, but a variation of the trim that lets the fringe fall toward the knitting instead of away from the edge is featured on the neckline and cuffs. While this variation is knit the same way, the needle setup and attachment are slightly different. Unlike other trims, you knit the fringe trim first before the rest of the project, as it is incorporated as you go. My tension for this yarn is 9.1 on a Brothers Bulky 230, and I'm set to knit in both directions. We can put that aside. Now for the needle arrangement. For the bottom edge, I want about a 1/2 inch, and in this gauge, that's about 3 stitches. Now, I'm going to move over closer to this row counter so I don't have to go so far in order to trigger it to go off. So I'm going to bring 3 needles out into work. I'm going to leave 3 out of work, and then I'm going to bring 2 into work. These 2 will eventually be dropped later. These needles over here dictate how wide you want the border. These out of work needles plus these 2 needles dictate how deep the fringe is going to be when it's undone. In this case, it's approximately 3 times the width of the needles that are out of work. So I'm bringing 3 needles into hold position, 3 needles I'm leaving in out of work, and I'm bringing 1 needle into over here into work position. Now I'm going to put my clip about 8 inches from the end, and I'm going to E-wrap these 3 needles. This one I'm not going to do anything to, and my row counter is set to 0, so I'm going to knit 1 row. Now, what that did was that just held that and created a loop over here. Okay? When my carriage is on the same side as my working needles, this one I don't consider my working needle. I'm going to pick up the last 2 bars in it and hang them on the end needle closest to the bars. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? This is where I might need a little bit of weight to help me along from this point on. Now, in addition, for row 2, I'm going to bring the second needle up into work position. These are going to knit, but they're eventually going to be let loose. Okay, so I'm going to knit back. Knit back again. So these are knitting and these are knitting. Okay, but I'm going to find the last 2 bars because my carriage is on the same side as my border stitches. These are the border stitches. And I hang those 2 bars. Knit back and knit back. So, pick up the next 2 bars, hang them on the next needle, or on that first needle of the grouping, and knit back and knit back. So if you look carefully, these are the last 2 bars. One kind of crisscrosses down, so don't pick this one up. You've already done that one. Pick up this one and the next one, and hang those on the needle of the border closest to the bars. See how we get this nice little crisscross pattern? By hanging those stitches, it takes a little bit longer, but it helps to lock down the fringe. And this fringe is going to be cut because I'm making a toddler sweater, and I don't want the child to get caught on any of the loops. So the fringe will be free hanging when I'm all done. Now you can do it without lifting those stitches, but I think it's way worth the effort. So I'm doing 73 rows, and I'm ending on the left because I want to bind off these 3 stitches. The other stitches are going to be left to be dropped. So those won't be bound off. And all I'm going to do is bind off around the gate pegs. You can do any bind off that you'd like. It doesn't really make too much difference because it's going to be part of the seam. Once I get to this point, I can cut my yarn, leave about 8 inches on this end so I can use it to seam with later, and pull this end through. So let's look at our fringe. These are our 3 stitches of the border, and there's our out of work stitches, and these are the last 2 stitches that we will later drop. And that's what it looks like from the inside. The fringe trim variation lets the fringe point inward toward the knitting, making it a good choice for necklines and cuffs. The basic method had 3 stitches for the border, 3 out of work for the fringe, and 2 in work to create the fringe also. This time we're going to add 3 more. Now this could be wider. If you were working on a standard bed machine, you might want 10 stitches over here, okay? Or you might want 6 here because you want it to be a little longer. It just depends on what you want. So in this case, for this particular sweater, I'm doing 6 stitches in work position for the border, 3 out for the fringe, and 2 in. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing we did before. Other than this has more stitches, we're just going to E-wrap those border needles. We're going to take this one out of work and thread up our machine because we can't do anything until the second row for that. This time I'm going to hang a little bit of weight here because I have more stitches in a row. Put my clip on, and I'm going to knit across. That one knit. Now I'm bringing up the second needle over here, and then just like before, we're going to pick up the 2 bars and hang them on the needle of the border closest to the bars and knit back. And we're going to knit to the left. Okay, when we're over here, we're going to pick up the last 2 bars and hang them on that needle, just like the basic fringe. It's just the difference in how we set things up. And here's our last row for the cuff. We're going to unthread our machine, bring these needles out to the hold position. That puts the stitches behind the latches, and I'm just going to simply bind off around the gate pegs. Pull the end through, the last stitch bound off. These 2 were not bound off, and just pop it off the machine. Now we are ready to work with the fringe trim. It is easier to handle the trim as it comes off the machine and wait until the final step of the project to release the open stitches. I'm going to be hanging this piece that I have calculated for this across these needles like so, with the right side, the knit side of the border facing the machine. I'm going to pick up a couple of stitches on each end and hang them. Now because this is a bulky, I am hanging just half the stitch. You could, if you wanted to, hang the whole stitch, but for this purpose, I think I'm going to just do half a stitch. I'm just going to hang the first couple on this end. Then I'm going to go to the middle, and I'm going to find 2 in the middle and hang them there. Where does it want? It wants to go there. Then I'm going to the middle of the middle, half of the half, I should say, the middle of each half, and hanging 2 there, half of each half again. I'm going to come into this side and hang half the halfway point. Now it's going to tell you which way it wants to go. Just let it do it because it's going to be nice and even then. Okay. And over here I'm picking up a half stitch, and I'm picking up the half of the half. That spreads it out evenly across the needles. Okay? So I'm pulling down, and you see these empty needles? I'm going to stick my end through there, and here's one here. I'm just picking up a half of the stitch. That's because it's a bulky. So these are all done. I'm pulling down and I'm looking at it. And then I'm continuing across this row. Once all the stitches have been hung, what you want to do is you want to do a double check. First, I want to make sure that there's at least one stitch on each needle. And I didn't skip a needle. But I'm also looking to see if there's a unique stitch on every needle. And this here, right here, is an example in which two needles got in the same stitch. So what I did was I took it and I moved it so that this one has a unique stitch on it. And I keep pulling down and checking. Here's another example. Two needles are in the exact same stitch. So one of them I have to release, and I just move over and pick up the next stitch. I'm pulling down, checking for those two things. And once I'm satisfied, then I'm ready to begin knitting the sweater. Bring all the stitches out, only because I want to help them along. I'm still in main tension, and all I'm going to do is knit this row. That's my first row of my sweater. This became the cast-on. Now all I have to do is continue knitting. That is how you hang and use the fringe for the bottom of a sweater. Isn't that easy? And look how nice the front looks. The trim is attached to the cuffs and neckline using the exact same method. If not already there, hang the garment edge stitches on the allotted needles with the public side facing the machine. Begin with the end stitches, then hang the halfway point, followed by the quarter points, as shown earlier in the video, until all the needles are filled with one unique stitch. In this sample sweater, the sleeve was knit from the top down, so the open stitches along the cuff are already positioned correctly on the machine, and only the trim needs to be rehung. Next, hang the outer half of the border edge stitch of the trim on the same needles with the knit side facing the machine, and following the same process. When finished, check again. Each needle should hold 2 stitches. Bind off around the gate pegs through both stitches to join the trim to the edge. After attaching all the trim, seam the garment together, then return to the fringe trim to finish the seam lines. With the right side facing, graft the border stitches from the front to the matching border stitches on the back at both side seams. For the sleeves and the neckline, first graft the stitches that show on the outside, then whip stitch the inside stitches since they will not be visible. Finally, fold the trim in half toward the outside of the sweater. Align the joining seam with the border stitch closest to the bars, the same stitch used to hang the bars while knitting the trim. The fringe should hang freely on the outside. Do you see how these stitches over here go right into this junction right there? If you stitch right through there, it comes right out in the middle of that edge where you hung the stitches. And that's what you want. And then you want to go into the next stitch and then just whip stitch it. It's actually more like a running stitch. You're going to come up in this one. You're going to skip over to the next place where that comes out of and stitch through that right there. And we're just going to continue and go all the way to the end. Around the neckline, be sure to leave enough slack for the head to pass comfortably through the opening. So there is my little hem all turned up. And we can just weave this in here just enough so that I can bring it back here and bring it right through at the seam, because you will need a little bit of fringe at the seam. And that comes out right there. If you want, you can knot it. I don't even have to because I wove those ends in. Now, we just take out the fringe. After the 2 stitches are undone, the loops of the fringe form. For children, trim the loops open so they don't catch on objects while playing. And that is just how easy it is to knit fringe trim and use it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos and events. Happy machine knitting!